Also, the other benefit for President Xi of having all these COVID controls is that you are very, very easily able to track people. And that's another big benefit for this regime.
What do you do if you told people the way to beat this is no vaccine, and now you have a vaccine? So I think what you need is a propagandist.
Outside of the state infrastructure.
Exactly.
To start moving political opinion.
But I think when we think of propaganda, we think about other regimes that we didn't really appreciate. You're mighty silent.
All right, guys. So we got to talk about a water is wet story. Okay, story that I've talked about a lot. Something that should be obvious to everybody. But the Intercept has now recovered proof. Okay, documents, leaked emails, memos from the DHS to prove that they are in fact working with big tech to censor speech that they don't like. Okay, again, this should be a surprise to nobody. I've been saying this from the get-go. The people that have been screaming, well, these companies are private companies, they should better censor what they want. These people don't understand. These companies are not just private companies anymore that are acting in their best interest. They're acting in the interest of the government, okay, and the woke advertisers, okay? That is the main influences of these platforms, because I do believe in a truly capitalistic society, it is in their best interest, these social media platforms, to censor as less as possible. The reason why is because you get more eyeballs, you get more opinions on your platform. That is more space for ads, okay? However, that's not the world that we're operating in, because again, we have government influence and corporate America has gone woke, okay? They believe that all the money is in wokeness. So therefore, they don't want their ads to be shown on any type of content that they deem to be hateful, or put it this way, that the Democrat Party deems to be hateful, because it seems like the Democrat Party and the woke left, they are the arbiters of what is defined as hate speech, okay? So with that being said, we got to talk about this bombshell story that's honestly not a surprise, but the mainstream liberal media is not going to cover it. So it is my responsibility to talk about this, even though we should all be aware of this, as again, the Intercept, which is a leftist publication, is exposing the DHS and big tech for colluding together to censor speech that the government doesn't like, aka the Democrats don't like. Now, if you guys remember, Joe Biden, through the DHS, tried to establish a disinformation board that was dubbed the Ministry of Truth, led by Nina Jankowicz, who was dubbed the Minister of Truth. Now, that got massive backlash, and that ultimately got disbanded. However, as I reported, not a lot of people reported on this, but I definitely made a video about it. The Biden administration still pressed forward with the so-called disinformation board. They just made Kamala Harris the head of it, okay? And I actually want you to take a look at this clip of Karine Jean-Pierre being questioned by the media on Kamala Harris leading this new disinformation team. And of course, like always, the affirmative action press secretary had no answers.
The first one on the online policy task force that the vice president's leading, that's getting kicked off today. On a background call last night, we were told that it's going to be different from the Disinformation Governance Board in that it's going to focus on illegal conduct online. But the memo creating it was a little bit broader and mentioned, and I'm quoting from the document, quote, online harassment, abuse, and disinformation campaigns targeting women and LGBTQI+ individuals who are public and political figures. Could you clear up the disinformation charge?
So I would need to talk to her team. I was not on the background call, so that specific language that you're providing to me, I would just have to check in with her. I would also encourage you to check as well with her team. I can't say more because I wasn't on the background call.
Yeah, so of course she doesn't know anything. She never knows anything. But again, we do have more information here from the Intercept. That, again, is a leftist news publication that is exposing the DHS. And I just want to say this real quick, okay? Stuff like this, right, is a prime example of where populist people on the right and progressives kind of agree, okay? They do agree on these issues of civil liberties and government overreach, particularly, again, when it comes to issues of the government infringing on our constitutional rights. There is a portion of the left, like think, for example, Jimmy Dore, that do align with the populist right on these issues. The mainstream liberal media tries to pretend that distrust of the government is specifically a characteristic of the right, and that's just not true, right? And anybody saying that, you don't really understand the political landscape, okay? There is overlap. And again, this is just in reference to the David Papete story, in which the mainstream liberal media is just automatically saying the guy is a right-winger because he has certain beliefs, allegedly has certain beliefs that are distrustful of the government. Or he hates Nancy Pelosi, which again is something that progressives also do. They hate Nancy Pelosi. So I just want to mention that real quick because a lot of people don't really understand there is overlap in terms of what people kind of agree with in politics, even if they appear to be at the opposite end of the political spectrum. So let's read here. The Department of Homeland Security is quietly broadening its efforts to curb speech it considers dangerous. An investigation by the Intercept has found years of internal DHS memos, emails, and documents obtained via leaks and an ongoing lawsuit, as well as public documents, illustrate an expansive effort by the agency to influence tech platforms. Again, water is wet. The work, much of which remains unknown to the American public, came into clear view earlier this year when DHS announced a new Disinformation Governance Board, a panel designed to police misinformation, false information spread unintentionally, disinformation, false information spread intentionally, and malinformation, factual information shared typically out of context with harmful intent that allegedly threatens U.S. interests. While the board was widely ridiculed, immediately scaled back, and then shut down within a few months, other initiatives are underway at DHS, pivots to monitoring social media now that its original mandate, the war on terror, has been wound down. Yeah, so essentially they need something to do, right? They need something to do. They stopped chasing the Islamic extremists. Now they want to go after the American people. And the other DHS initiatives are things like the Kamala Harris initiative, in which she allegedly is concerned about disinformation targeted against politicians, women, and the LGBTQ community, okay? Because, criticisms of those groups of people apparently is disinformation, according to the government and Kamala Harris. Behind closed doors and through pressure on private platforms, the U.S. government has used its power to try to shape online discourse. According to meeting minutes and other records amended to a lawsuit filed by Missouri Attorney General Eric Schmidt, a Republican who is also running for Senate, discussions have ranged from the scale and scope of government intervention in online discourse to the mechanics of streamlining takedown requests for false or intentionally misleading information. Quote, platforms have got to get comfortable with government. It's really interesting how hesitant they remain, Microsoft executive Matt Matterson, a former DHS official, texted Jan Easterly, a DHS director, in February. Okay, so I'm not going to go through this whole article, but I'm just going to hit some of the main points here, okay, in regards to how big tech and the government are colluding. For example, when it comes to Facebook, there is also a formalized process for government officials to directly flag content on Facebook or Instagram and request that it be throttled or suppressed through a special Facebook portal that requires a government or law enforcement email to use. At the time of writing, the content request system at facebook.com/xtakedowns/login is still live. DHS and Meta, the parent company of Facebook, did not respond to a request for comment. The FBI declined to comment. Yeah, of course they have nothing to say, right? How can you explain that? The government has a backdoor fast track system to Facebook where they can just go in and say, hey, we want to take this down. This is disinformation. We deem this not to be true. You got to take it down. Again, this is insane. This is actual real fascism. Okay, this is not a private entity deciding to act on their own. No, this is a private entity that has now become an arm of the government. This is a way for the Democrat Party to subvert the First Amendment. That's exactly what's happening. That's exactly what's happening. DHS's mission to fight disinformation stemming from concerns about Russian influence in the 2016 presidential election began taking shape during the 2020 election and over efforts to shape discussions around vaccine policy during the coronavirus pandemic. Documents collected by the Intercept from a variety of sources, including current officials and publicly available reports, reveal the evolution of more active measures by DHS. According to a draft copy of DHS's quadrennial Homeland Security Review, DHS's capstone report outlining the department's strategy and priorities in the coming years, the department's plans to target, quote, inaccurate information on a wide range of topics, including the origins of the COVID-19 pandemic and the efficacy of COVID-19 vaccines, racial justice, U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan, and the nature of U.S. support to Ukraine. So all things, all subjects that the government is running propaganda on, particularly, again, pay attention to the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan, right? The government wants to shape people's opinions on that. Well, why is that? It's because the government is being ran by the Democrat Party, and the Democrats, aka Joe Biden, has been blamed the most for the debacle that was the withdrawal from Afghanistan, right? So again, the government has been wrong, right? They've been wrong on all these topics, okay? COVID-19 pandemic, propaganda, right? The vaccines, propaganda. Racial justice, propaganda. The U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan, so bad that everybody could see through any propaganda that was coming from that. I mean, that had no chance. And the nature of U.S. support to Ukraine, again, more propaganda, right? All subjects that, again, the government is trying to shape public opinion on, and the government has been proven to be wrong on these issues. Again, this is scary stuff, man. This is scary stuff. Again, it's not about what's actually true. It's about what fits the narrative that the Democrat Party wants to push. Quote, the challenge is particularly acute in marginalized communities, the report states, quote, which are often the targets of false or misleading information, such as false information on voting procedures, targeting people of color. Okay, so this is funny because apparently the misinformation is racist now, right? The spreading of misinformation is racist. Wow. So, I mean, again, basically in a nutshell here, this is an effort from the government to subvert the First Amendment, right? Because they can't do this constitutionally. So they go through big tech. They work through private organizations. Should be no surprise to anybody. But the question has to be moving forward here is that we're all aware of this. We know this is happening. What is the Republican Party going to do about it? Is the Republican Party going to go along to get along? Because I'm going to tell you, Republicans are somewhat responsible that we've gotten here, because the precursor to this is things like the Patriot Act that, you can argue violate the Fourth Amendment, okay, that are unconstitutional, that Republicans signed up for under George W. Bush to fight the so-called war on terror, which, by the way, we were lied to about, right? We were lied to about weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, okay? And back then, if you came out and you said that, hey, I think this is BS, there are no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, we have no proof, you'd have been silenced and shamed out of society. Because back then, everybody was supporting the war until it became clear that the war was BS, right? That there was no real reason for us to be in Iraq besides the fact we just wanted to get Saddam Hussein, okay? We didn't want to be in power anymore. And, they was like, hey, we need to go to Iraq, even though, the terrorists allegedly was operating in Afghanistan. We need to go to Iraq. It was just a huge debacle, right? It was nothing but lies and misinformation coming from the government. Again, this is why it's so dangerous to have the government now working with big tech to, quote unquote, police misinformation / disinformation, because we've seen the government be the biggest perpetuators of misinformation / disinformation, right? They're pushing the most propaganda more than anybody. So again, I mean, this stuff is not a surprise. This is a water's wet thing. The question is, what is the Republican Party going to do? Are they going to disband these initiatives? Are they actually going to do something about it? Or are they just going to talk, right? Because we know how politics goes, okay? These guys, they point out these issues. They never do anything about it because as long as it's an issue, it's something that they can campaign on. But if Republicans have as much power as we think they're going to have, they take back the House and the Senate, they do have some power to stop this stuff, and they should be held accountable. We should expect them to do it. They got a lot of work to do. I'm serious. They got a whole lot of work to do. We're not just talking about the border. We're not just talking about inflation. We're also talking about our civil liberties that are constantly under attack from the Democrat Party. Okay? They've gone full-blown authoritarian. They've been going full-blown fascism. This is real fascism. Why the mainstream liberal media is crying fascism? This is fascism. And they don't really want to talk about this. Again, this is why you see them get so pissed about the Paul Pelosi thing, about Elon Musk buying Twitter, because Elon Musk, let's, knock on wood, let's hope and pray that he sticks to his guns. Hopefully he's not going to play ball with the government on this, right? Hopefully he's not. But we will see. It remains to be seen. But again, you see why the mainstream liberal media is getting so outraged by somebody like Elon Musk buying Twitter, is because now Twitter can't be pressured by them and the government to essentially censor political speech that they don't like. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective.